Lillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala, have the good intentions. We talked about the obligations of the heart. We talked about the sins of the heart. Now let's talk about the sins of other organs, inshallah. So the author said, section, for other than the heart among the organs are sins. There are sins for other than the heart. We talked about sins of the heart, like the forbidden envy, the arrogance, showing off, and other things that are sins of the heart. We'll start with the sins of the stomach. Among the sins of the stomach is eating dead meat. Meita. Eating meita. That means eating meat, eating the meat of an animal that died without a religiously recognized slaughter. Eating the meat of an animal that died without a religiously recognized slaughter. Slaughter. Unless it's a fish or a locust. You don't have to slaughter the fish. If you found a fish was already dead, so you just found a fish there halfway eaten, or his head was cut off, you can still eat it. You don't need to slaughter a fish. You can eat the fish if it's dead already without slaughtering it. And the same thing for the locust. You don't have to slaughter the locust. The locust, it resembles a grasshopper, but it's not a grasshopper. It's different from the grasshopper, but it looks like one. It has the shape of a grasshopper, but it's different. It's permissible to eat that. If that chicken wasn't slaughtered, if it didn't have a religiously recognized slaughter, it's not permissible to eat it. Naam, I'm going to explain, inshallah. So if the animal didn't have a religiously recognized slaughter, you can't eat it. For example, I'll give you an extreme example. You found a bird dead on the sidewalk. Can you eat it? No. Can you pick it up and eat it? No, you can't. That's called dead meat. Meita. Or you found a pigeon smashed on the street. Can you scrape it up and eat its meat, cook it and eat it? No. Haram. That's haram. Tayyib. Likewise, if it's killing, if the way it died didn't fulfill the religious conditions, then it's not permissible to eat it. The religious condition is to slaughter, is to cut the throat. That is, a Muslim, Jew, or Christian has to cut the air pipe and the food pipe of that animal. If it was killed in any other way, it's not permissible to eat its meat. If it was electrocuted, if it was strangled, if some wolves caught a deer or a moose and they ate part of it and left the rest of it, you can't eat any of that. Say a bear was eating a fish and he threw the rest of it away. Can you eat it? Yeah, because it's a fish. You can eat it. It's a fish. You don't have to slaughter the fish. Meaning, so that if it's already dead, you can still eat it. If that fish is already dead, you can still eat it. If you were in a boat and you saw half a fish floating by you, you can take it and eat it if you want to. But if you're walking down the street and you saw a little purple dead bird on the sidewalk, you can't eat it because it hasn't been slaughtered with a proper slaughter. And even if you doubt if it was slaughtered properly, you can't eat it. The issue of meat is very strict. The issue of meat is stricter than other issues. So, if that meat was not slaughtered, if that animal was not slaughtered with a religiously recognized slaughter, you can't eat it. You can't eat its meat. That's like a fish. Anything that lives in the sea, you can eat it. Yes. Yes. Meita. Meita. Meita is the dead animal. Maytah. The thing that died without a religiously recognized slaughter. Yes? The seals don't only live in the sea. Don't they come out? Can't they live on the ground without going in the water? Those are not fish. So, the thing that you eat, it has to have a religiously recognized slaughter that was performed by a Muslim, Jew, or a Christian. And it has to be an edible animal also. So it can't be any animal. Even if it's slaughtered, there are some animals we still can't eat. Of course, we can't eat the pig. Even if someone slaughtered a pig, the way we slaughter, it's haram. And you can't eat the dog. And you can't eat anything that attacks viciously with its fangs. Like wolves, bears, lions, pumas, jaguars, or anything like that. Even the elephant has 2 teeth that come out, and it attacks viciously with those teeth. Even if it doesn't eat meat, you can't eat the elephant. With the exception of the hyena, according to Ash-Shafi'i, because there's a hadith about it. Yes? With the exception of the hyena, because there's a hadith about it. You can't eat a cat, for example. Also, you cannot eat things that are disgusting, like snails, roaches, spiders, scorpions, mice. All that's haram. Also, you cannot eat birds that attack viciously with their talons, like eagles, hawks, falcons, owls, vultures, and buzzards, or wolves, or bears. Nothing that attack viciously with its fangs. Also, you cannot eat the amphibious things, the things that live in the water and on the sea, and in the sea. You can't eat the small crabs. You can eat the big crabs, like the king crab and the Alaskan crab, Dungeness crab. Crayfish, those little things that look like lobsters. Don't they stay in the water, or they come out of the water? As far as I thought they stayed in the water. You know? I don't know. If it's amphibious, you can't eat it. If it stays in the water, you can eat it. No, the Dungeness crabs, the king crabs, you can eat those. They stay in the water. The little crabs, like the little Baltimore crabs, you can't eat those. They come out the water and they survive. They stay out of the water, and they stay alive out of water. You can also eat animals that you can't catch if you shoot them with an arrow. If you shoot it with an arrow, like a deer, because it's not going to let you walk up to it, right? It's not like a cow. The deer's not going to let you get close. So you can shoot it with an arrow, with something sharp, not with a gun. If you shoot it with a gun, you can't kill it. If you kill it with a gun, you can't eat it. One moment, please. If you kill it with a gun, you can't eat it. Because killing it with a gun, the bullet kills by its blunt force. You can't eat what was killed by the blow of something with blunt force. One moment, please. You can't eat what was killed. If you shoot an animal and you kill it with a bullet, that's like busting it in the head with a block. What if you smash his head with a block, or you smash his head with a bat? How did you kill it? You killed it with a blunt force. The bullet kills by its blunt force. But you can eat the animal that you kill by an arrow, because the arrow kills by its sharpness, not by its blunt force. That's if you can't catch the animal. If it's an animal you can catch, then you have to catch it and slaughter it, like a cow. You don't have to shoot a cow with an arrow. It's not going to go anywhere, right? So you can just go get the cow, and slaughter it. Or the sheep, you can slaughter it. But something like a rabbit, you'll never catch it. You got to shoot it with an arrow, for example. Or a deer, it'll never let you get close to it. So those things, you can shoot them with an arrow, and the arrow will kill it with its sharpness, and then you can eat it. Or you can even send a trained bird after it, or a trained dog after it, and the dog or the bird will kill it, and as long as it doesn't eat it, the dog eats it, you can't eat it. Just kill it. That's why you got to train it. A trained dog. That means you tell it to stop, it'll stop. When it kills the animal, it won't eat it because it's trained. You just send the dog will get him, kill him, and just leave it there. He won't eat it. Then you can eat it. The bird, the falcon will go get it. It'll, like, for example, go catch the rabbit, kill it, and it won't eat it because you trained it. Then you can eat it. Otherwise, if the animal eats it, you can't eat it. If the animal eats from it, you can't eat it. If you don't know how it was killed, you can't eat it. Say, for example, you saw a bird in a tree, and there was a lake there. You shot the bird fell in the water. How did it die? Maybe it died by the arrow, maybe it died by drowning. So if you don't know how it died, you can't eat it. In a hadith, that came in a hadith. One of the companions asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That exact scenario happened. He told him, I shot the bird and it was in the water. The Prophet told him, don't eat it because you don't know if it was killed by your shot or if it drowned. Also in another hadith, a man said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I unleash my dog and I say Bismillah. And then I find with my dog at the kill another dog. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't eat it, you don't know which dog killed it. So if you don't know how the animal died, you can't eat it. Question? Then you can slaughter it. If you shoot an animal with anything and it doesn't kill it, then you have to slaughter it. Even if you shot it with the arrow. If shooting it with the arrow didn't kill it, but it only immobilized it, then you have to go and slaughter it, because now you can catch it. If you shot it with a gun and didn't kill it, then you can go and slaughter it. But if you shot it with the gun and killed it with the gun, you can't eat it. Yes? If you hit an animal with something and you slaughter it before the throes of death, then you can eat it. The throes of death, when it starts shaking, it's ready to die. It's losing its life. Eat whatever. You shoot it with an arrow, you hit it with your car. Say you hit a deer with your car. Does it have a stable life, or is it shaking now ready to die? If it has a stable life, you can slaughter it and eat it. If it's shaking, now it's ready to die, that's the throes of death, you can't eat it. Well, I haven't learned, I don't even know the different types of arrows. But something sharp. As long as it kills with its sharpness. It doesn't kill by blunt force. That's the rule. It has to kill by its sharpness. I mean, Wafiq. No problem. Yes? No. Doesn't matter. You mean if you killed it? It doesn't matter. Because you can't catch it in the first place. Right? Got a deer running 40, 50 miles per hour trying to get away from you. So you shoot it. If you kill it, then you can eat it. If you didn't kill it, but you immobilized it, then you go slaughter it. So let me review. If an animal died without a religiously recognized slaughter, you can't eat it. Like it drowned, it was strangled, it was partly eaten by predators. Wolves, for example, ate part of it and left the rest of it. It was stabbed. When a goat came, hit him up in the chest, hit him in the neck, punctured his throat, for example, and killed him. or stabbed him in the chest, stabbed him in the heart, for example, and killed him. You can't eat it. Or fell from a cliff. All of that, you can't eat it. Unless it's fish or locust. The fish, you can eat it even if it's dead. You don't have to catch it alive and then slaughter it. And it doesn't have to be slaughtered. No one has to kill it. If it's dead, you can eat it. And the locust, which resembles a grasshopper. You can eat it. I never ate one. I hear it's tasty. The locust. I heard it's tasty like shrimp. They said they pull the head off, pull the legs off, pull the shell off, and eat it. Like a shrimp. Maybe give it a shot, inshallah. MashaAllah. One of the sheikhs, he said that in some of the countries where there's Muslims, when the locusts swarm, after the locust swarm is over, there's dead locusts all over the place. He said the Muslim kids, they take the locusts and they just put them in their pocket. They take them to school, eat them. They pop them in their mouth like candy. MashaAllah. So, anything that died without religiously recognized slaughter, you can't eat it. If it needs a religiously recognized slaughter, then that has to be by a Muslim, Christian, or Jew who cuts it, who cuts the throat, cutting the windpipe and the food pipe. Has to cut the windpipe and the food pipe, and the sunnah to also cut the jugular veins. That's recommended. Now, if you only cut the windpipe and the food pipe, that's enough. But it's better to cut the jugular veins along with it. Those two veins on the side. Cut the whole jugular vein. If you cut off the whole head, it's valid. With one cut, that means yes, with one cut, but if you dropped the knife and picked it up and finished, it's still valid. You can start cutting, and then if you drop the knife, you can pick it up and finish. There's a small detail in there. I'll catch it and tell you, inshallah. It's not a condition that the blade doesn't leave that throat. That's not a condition. So I'll review what's that detail, and I'll tell you, inshallah. Yes. Yeah, you can. If you go like that and you saw at the throat until you cut it, that's valid. That's valid. And the blade you use to cut the throat cannot be made of bone or nail. That's not valid. The Messenger of Allah forbade that. It can't be made of bone or nail. Like, for example, you got a lion's fang and then you sharpened it into a blade so that you could cut the throat. That's not valid. It's not valid. It can't be a tooth or a nail. It can be anything else. It can be steel, it can be glass, it can be wood. Like, let's say you took a piece of cane or a piece of wood and you sharpened its edges and made it a sharp blade. And then you took that and cut the animal's throat, that's valid. Or you took a piece of glass and it was sharp and you cut the animal's throat, that's valid. Or metal, like a knife, all of that's valid. Anything, it just can't be tooth or nail. It cannot be a tooth or a nail. Yes? You know what a nail is. Yes. Nail. Yeah, like a claw. That's a nail. Like a claw, an animal's claw. A nail. Whatever you use to cut the animal's throat cannot be a tooth or a nail. The Messenger of Allah forbade that. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If that's the case, you might as well just bite his throat. Just rip his throat out. So it has to have a religiously recognized slaughter by a Muslim, Jew, or a Christian. by cutting the food pipe and the air pipe, and it's recommended to cut the jugular veins along with it. And it can't be an animal that attacks viciously with its fangs. It can't be a bird that attacks viciously with its talons, with the exception of the hyena. The hyena attacks viciously with its fangs, but there's a hadith about it. And it can't be disgusting like snails and roaches and things like that. Mice. It's permissible to eat squirrels. It's permissible to eat possum. You want to catch one in your trash can. But if he eats trash, you might not want to eat it. Yeah. You could, but his meat won't be so nice if he eats trash. If you want to eat it, let him eat something nice first. If you wanted to eat it, you caught him in your trash can, catch him, put him in a cage, feed him some good stuff for a while so his meat can get better. Then when he get healthy, then you slaughter. Yes. I haven't heard about that fish in particular. What's the judgment? I'd have to ask about it, inshallah. It's not whether it's a predator or not, because it might be a predator, but its teeth are soft. Like the fox. The fox's teeth are soft. That's why Ash-Shafi'i said you can eat the fox. It doesn't fit the description. Or it might not be a predator, but its teeth are still strong and it can attack powerfully with its teeth, like the elephant. So the rule is, like I mentioned, not to eat it if it attacks viciously with its fangs, its canine teeth, or except for the hyena, or if it attacks viciously with its talons, like hawks and owls and things like that, or if it's disgusting, or if the religion said it's haram, or if the religion just said you can't kill it. Yes? I don't know if you can eat the rhino. MashaAllah. Yeah. MashaAllah. And just trivia question, how do you slaughter the porcupine? You can eat porcupine. How do you slaughter the porcupine? Yeah. Because you can't hold it, he's gonna stick you. Yes? Yes. You put it in water, and then he's gonna put his head up so he can breathe. When he puts his head up, you slit his throat. And by the way, it's said about the porcupine that every part of the porcupine's body is beneficial for the corresponding human part of the body. So its eyes are good for your eyes, its quills are good for your hair, its tongue is good for your tongue, I guess. One brother said he got a porcupine, he slaughtered it. One of my sheikhs. He said he got a porcupine, he slaughtered the porcupine. His son had asthma. He said he took the porcupine's lung and he made his son breathe into it like a bag, and his asthma went away. MashaAllah. And he said people take the porcupine's eyes and they dry it out and they crush it and make kuhul out of it. You know the kuhul the Muslims put in their eyes? They take the porcupine's eyes and they crush it and they dry it and crush it and make kuhul out of it and put it in their eyes. Inshallah. Inshallah. And you can take its quills and like crush it up and make cream out of it or something, put it in your hair. Inshallah. Inshallah, I'll get me a porcupine, inshallah. And it was said about the parrot, and Allah knows best. It was said about the parrot that if you eat his tongue, if you can't speak, if you eat his tongue, you'll be able to speak after that. And if you can already speak and you eat his tongue, you'll become eloquent in your speech. Wallahu a'lam, Allah knows. But I still want to try it out, inshallah. طيب. Any question about the meat? Yes. 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 Here, the point is, if you don't know how the animal died, you can't eat it. So, did he know? Was it his trained dog that killed the animal, or was it the other dog? He didn't know, so he couldn't eat it. Was it the arrow that killed his bird, or did the bird drown? Because he doesn't know which one killed it. It's a condition that it's a trained dog. It has to be a trained dog. If you're using a dog, it has to be trained. Or like a dog, like a leopard. Or the bird. If you use a hawk, it has to be trained. Trained means 4 things. When you unleash it, it goes. When you forbid it, it stops. It won't eat any of the animal, and it does that over and over and over again. To verify that your animal is trained, you go to a professional trainer, and he'll let you know that your animal is trained. So among the sins of the stomach is eating the dead meat. And among the sins of the stomach is consuming usury, consuming riba. That means to consume the money by these unlawful dealings, which are the dealings of riba. If a person got money from riba, and then he used that money to buy food and he ate that food, he got a sin of the stomach. And if he used that money to buy clothing, he got a sin too. He can't use it. It's haram money. And you consuming money from any haram deal, from any invalid deal, that is. Consuming money from any invalid deal is haram. Like for a person to buy a house with haram money, then living in that house is haram. There will be no reward in his prayer. If he prays in that house, there's no reward in his prayer. If he bought clothes with haram money and he prayed in those clothes, there's no reward in his prayer. His prayer is valid, but there's no reward. The prayer is valid, but there's no reward. It's valid means on Judgment Day, he won't be blamed for not praying. He prayed, but he won't have any reward for that prayer. So the one who wants the reward of his prayer, he makes sure that his food is lawful, his clothing is lawful, and the place in which he prays is lawful. That's a condition. One of the conditions for the reward of your prayer is that your food, your clothing, and your place of prayer are lawful. Add to that, to get reward for your prayer, that you have to fear Allah in your prayer, and you have to pray sincerely. Don't pray to be recognized by the people. Even at least a moment. For at least even a moment, if he feared Allah for one moment, he gets reward. But the more he fears Allah, the more reward he'll get. If he had haram in his stomach, he'll have no reward in his prayer until the haram come out of his stomach. And among the sins of the stomach is drinking wine. Drinking wine. Wine is the drink that causes ecstasy and euphoria. It is originally juice. Originally it's juice. One moment, please. Originally it's juice. It's fermented juice. That means they take juice, grape juice. Wine is grape juice, originally. Khamr in Arabic. Khamr originally is the fermented grape juice. But any alcoholic drink, what we call an alcoholic drink, it is fermented juice. It means they take something, whether it's a fruit or a grain or something else. It could even be honey. And they let it sit. It just gets old. That's it. You don't have to do anything to it, but let it sit. You take the juice And I'm not telling you how to make it so you can make it, of course. You take the juice and just let it sit after like a week or 2 weeks without putting it in a refrigerator. After a week or 2 weeks, it'll ferment. I mean, it'll change. It'll transform. You smell it, it'll smell sour. And at that point, it'll be intoxicating. If it ferments, I don't know, but if it ferments, then yeah, that's what the fermenting is. The fermenting is for it to transform. Like, for example, let's say you had some juice for the baby in a bottle. Then a baby bottle rolled behind the couch. Then you found that baby bottle like 2 weeks later. Oh, this is where the baby bottle is. Still has juice in it. You open it up. Oh. But a pure juice. I'm not talking about some high fructose corn syrup stuff. I'm talking about juice. Just juice from a fruit juice. It would be wine at that point, intoxicating. Drinking it will be haram. And this drink has many detriments. Among its detriments is that it can make a person lose his sanity. He can go insane, lose his sanity altogether. Among its detriments is that it makes the person vomit, because it's like poison. And among its detriments is that it makes headaches. And among its detriments, that it makes his senses dull, numb his senses, so he can't feel. So he'll get in the car, he can't feel the pedal under his foot, so he pushes his foot down harder so he can feel the pedal, for example. Wind up speeding down the street. Or he get cut, he won't realize it. He get bruised, he won't even realize it. He's hurt, he doesn't know it, because it numbed him. And among its detriments is that it takes his shyness away. That's detrimental. It'll take his shyness away, so that he would do what he wouldn't normally do. Had he been in his right senses, he wouldn't have done it. But when he got under the influence, it take his shyness away, to the extent that he might rape his mother or rape his sister or his own daughter under this influence. Had he had his mind, he wouldn't have done it. Had he had his proper senses, he wouldn't have done it. But then it will take his shyness away. Or he might expose himself, for example. He might expose his nakedness. Had he not been under the influence, he wouldn't have done it. But when he got under the influence of that, he did it because his shyness was gone. And among the detriments of that is that it makes the person tell his secrets, because he talked too much. You keep talking and talking, and you start telling his secrets, his own secrets. And among his detriments is that it affects his emotions. So he might get really, really, really happy, exaggeratedly happy. Or he might get so sad. He's crying, big muscle man, crying and sad. Or he might get the rams, as they say. He get really, really angry, ready to fight you, punch you in your face, assault you. MashaAllah. No. And on top of that, it's not just filthy. It's like urine. It's najas. The intoxicating drink is najas. And there's another type also. It's called nabid. I don't know if there's a name for it in English. Date-soaked water. That's to take dates, put water in the container, like take a bottle, put dates in there, pour water in there, and just let it sit. After 4, 5, 6 days, it'll be intoxicating without putting it in the refrigerator. And the same thing for raisins. If a person put raisins in a container and he put water in there, and just let it sit. After 4, 5, 6 days, it'll be intoxicating. Before it gets intoxicating, you can drink it. Even the Prophet drank from that, the date-soaked water. It's sunnah not to drink it past 3 days. If you soak water, if you soak dates in water, it's sunnah not to drink it past 3 days, out of fear of it becoming intoxicating. Yes? I'm sorry, does anything happen to the date? I don't know. But if you put raisins, the raisins will swell back up, like they turn back into grapes again. But not perfect grapes. They'll be a little wiggly, soft. I did that. I tried it once. I had some raisin-soaked water. MashaAllah. Put the raisins in the bottle, put the water. And then after a while, what happened? Because raisins are just dried up dried up grapes, right? So the raisin will start absorbing the water. It'll start getting fat again. Turn back into a raisin, into a grape. Then after 3 days, khalas, just pour it out. And then, as for vinegar, vinegar is wine that transformed. So wine is juice that transformed, and vinegar is wine that transformed. Wine, yeah. So if you took juice and you just let it sit there, after a while, it's going to fizz and change and turn into wine. And then you just let it sit more. After a while, it'll turn into vinegar. And you can eat it again. When it turns into vinegar, you can eat it again.
So when it's vinegar, you can eat it haram.
Yes. Because it transformed. It transforms. So the juice, you can eat it. But then it's actually going to transform. When it transforms into intoxicating drink, you can't consume it anymore. And then it'll transform again. When it transforms into vinegar, then you can eat it. Yes? The vinegar is originally intoxicating drink that transformed. You can eat it. You can consume vinegar. Vinegar is an intoxicating drink that transformed. When it transforms, you can consume it. That's it. Yani, don't worry about the name of it. Is it vinegar? If it's vinegar, you can eat it. Nah. As long as it's vinegar. If it's vinegar, you can consume it. It's not haram to consume vinegar. Khal. In Arabic, it's called khal. And depending on what they use to make that drink, the drink come out different. So what they use for wine, grapes. What they use for beer, barley. I don't know. So it depends on what you use. And you ever heard of corn liquor? What they use for that? Corn. Yeah, still alcohol. Malt liquor is some type of a grain they use. They can make intoxicating drinks from all kinds of things. It's haram. People make it on their own, like I just described for you. What I told you, people do it. It's haram. طيب. Any question? Then let's move on to the sins of the eyes. Among the sins of the eyes is looking at the face and hands of marriageable women with desire, and at other than the face and the hands Absolutely, meaning with no detail. So, when it comes to looking at the face of a woman and the hands of a woman, a marriageable woman, who's not your wife, of course, then you can, as long as it's without desire. The desire means the pleasure that you feel in your heart upon seeing her. If you look at her face and her hands without desire, it's not haram. If you look at her face and her hands with desire, then you have to look away. If upon seeing her you feel the desire, then look away. Then you didn't fall into a sin. But if you look again after you already felt the desire, then it's haram. Like, for example, you're looking at her and you look without desire. But then as you look, the desire creep into your heart, so then you look away. Then you didn't fall into a sin. Or, for example, just your vision fell on her and you found her desirable, so you look away. And you didn't fall into a sin. But if you look again, while you have that in your heart, then that's haram. You fell into a sin. That's when it comes to her face and her hands. As for looking at other parts of her body, it's haram to look at her, even if it's without desire. Looking at anything other than the face and the hands is haram, even without desire. Like her hair. Looking at her hair, it's haram. Let's talk about those weaves. That's not her hair. The weave's not her hair. That's some kind of synthetic plastic alloy. That's what you call it. Unless it's human hair. If it's a real woman's hair that she weaved into her hair, you still can't. Because then you'll be looking at a woman's hair. Yeah, they do. If it's human hair, you can't look at it. If it's a woman's hair. Huh? You can look at a horse's hair. It's not haram. It's not haram to look at animals. You can't look at the woman with desire. You can look at her face and her hands without desire. You can't look at her hair, even if it's separated from her body. If her hair is in her comb or in her brush, you can't look at it. You can see her hands, so that means you can see her nails. That's part of her hands. If she clipped her nails, you can see her nails, her clipped nails. But you can't see her feet. That should be covered, according to Shafi'i. So if she clipped her toenails, you can't look at them, because that's part of her awrah. You see how it works? That's clear? Yani, even if it's separated from the body, any part of the woman's body that you're not allowed to look at, you can't look at it even if it's separated from her body. Say her arm got cut off. Her arm's sitting there. All you can do is look at her hand. You can't look at the rest of it. Or her head got cut off. You can look at her face only. Not the rest. MashaAllah. That's what we're talking about. Because you can look at your wife. A man can look at his wife. It's not haram. She's his wife. A man can see all of the body of his wife, with or without desire. As for a woman who's not his wife, then it depends. Is she a marriageable woman or is she a non-marriageable relative? So you have three cases here. Let's start with the case of the wife. The wife, you can see your wife, you can see all the body of your wife with no details. There's no details. You can see all of her body. With desire or without desire, doesn't matter. A non-marriageable relative, your mother, your sister, your daughter, your aunt, your niece, you can't marry any of them. You can see her body except what's between her navel and her knees. Except what's between the navel and the knees. So that means, according to that, if a person's mother wore izar or wore a towel around the waist and covered between her navel and her knees, and her breasts were exposed, seeing her breasts is not haram. It's not haram. When it comes to the non-marriageable relative, the woman you cannot marry, You can see her body except for what's between her navel and her knees. If a person saw his sister's breast or his mother's breast or his aunt or his niece or his daughter's breast, it's not haram. Without desire. It's not haram. But if he saw his mother's thigh, that's haram. Because that's between her navel and her knees. So the culture we have is backwards. Because a lady will be in her house with her booty shorts on and all her thigh is showing and her son can see it, her brother can see, and her dad can see, and that's haram. And if her chest was showing, they say, "Oh, below, what's wrong with you? Cover yourself." And religiously, it's the other way. If her thigh was covered and her breast was showing, it's not haram. Yes. MashaAllah. Subhanallah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Yes? Non-marriageable relatives. Non-marriageable. Any woman you can't marry, ever. Any woman you could never marry under any circumstance, then you can see her body except what's between her navel and her knees. Can you marry her? Then you can see. Okay? Anyone who's non-marriageable. Yes? Well, babies, different. Babies don't have awrah. Meaning, if there was a little baby here crawling around butt naked, it's not haram. Even once the child can take care of himself, once the child can make a stinjat by himself and put his own clothes on, it's not permissible for you to look at their private part with no excuse. You don't look without an excuse. Now, what about the marriageable woman? So we talked about the wife. You can see all of her body. The non-marriageable relative, you can see her body except what's between her navel and her knees. And what about the marriageable woman? You can't see her body except for her face and her hands. And that has to be without desire. That's it. Any question? As for a man with a man, a man can see a man's body except what's between his navel and his knees. And be mindful here. When I say between the navel and the knees, that means what's below the navel has to be covered. So there's an area between the navel and the pubic hair. There's an area between the navel and the pubic hair that needs to be covered. A lot of people don't cover that. That's awrah. It has to be covered. If a man want to come out without a shirt on, then let him cover up to his navel. Not up to his waist, up to his navel. The area between his navel and his knees. Or he wants to be in his house with his shirt off in front of other than his wife. Then he covers between his navel and his knees. He pulls his izar up to his navel. Any question about that? Yes. There's a difference between seeing her because you can't stop your vision from seeing her and looking at the body part. If a woman is here and she has on shorts and a t-shirt only, then she might come into our vision. I mean, I can see the whole room. So just the fact that I can see she's in my vision, that in itself is not haram. What's haram is for me to look at her. To look at her legs, to look at her arms, to look at her neck, to look at her ears. All that's haram, even without desire. The only thing I can look at is her face and her hands, without desire. And be careful with the tattoos, because the tattoo might draw your vision. And seeing the tattoo is seeing her skin. You don't want to look at that. So she has a tattoo on her neck, on her back, on her arm, on her leg. Don't let that tattoo grab your vision, because then you look and you'll be looking at her skin, and that's haram. طيب, let's stop here, insha'Allah ta'ala. And next week, if we live long enough, we'll start with the sins of the tongue.